Hi everyone, this is Akira the White, and this is the video that I will be making to discuss the creation of my Emiya-san series. I'll be quickly going over some of the technical aspects of it, and then some of the creative aspects that went to, pardon me, just gonna close the door, the creation of the series. So before I start, I just want to say that I never expected this video series to take off the way it did. You know, when the first video came out back in like April of 2019, I thought maybe I might get like 500, a few sort of views per video, and well, I have to say, when the disappearance of Emiya-san really took off, it surprised me. You know, I was surprised to get such positive feedback on the creative work that I did. So, you know, wouldn't be possible without all you guys' support. I probably would have lost motivation to make the third episode if I hadn't received such amazing feedback from the second video. So, to preface this, thank you all so much for your kind support, your criticisms, and everything you've done to help me pull through this project. So, let's start off by talking about some of the technical aspects of this. With regards to the way I actually created the videos, I am reusing assets from Fate Grand Order proper. There was a gentleman on the internet, I do not know who you are, but thank you so much because you made my work possible. He ripped all the Fate Grand Order assets, like sprites, portrait arts, backgrounds, all that stuff, and someone else had a rip of all the sound effects that were being used in the game, so I leveraged some of those as well. I wanted it to be as authentic as possible to the actual Fate Grand Order game. Like on YouTube, there's a lot of content creators that deal with Fate Grand Order. You have people like, I'm just going to go ahead and list a few out that comes to the top of my head, like Lily Aquina, John Peacekeeper, Hanako Green, Mist, K Collections, GNA Reviews, Raizu Stash, all these kinds of people. Like, they got a lot of content on YouTube already, and it wouldn't have made much sense for me to try and pursue something similar. There's already a lot of people in that market spot, but what I noticed watching all these Fate Grand Order related stuff on YouTube is that no one had done exactly what I had done, which was to make videos that showcased stories of Fate Grand Order characters as though they were actually from the game. There's a lot of people who do comic dubbings as well, but nothing quite like this. So that's what inspired me to take that up in the first place. The program that I use to build most of my projects, actually no, all of my projects when I'm talking about, is RenPy. So, Python-based software. I came across this because I knew that Katawa Shoujo, another really great visual novel by the way, was made in this. I dabbled in it before, and I figured it has a lot of flexibility. As long as someone had the art assets from Fate Grand Order, it was possible to make something similar. It's very coding intensive, as you can see, a lot of effects you gotta work with. You do have to know some stuff about like coding blocks, algorithms, and that kind of stuff, because it does matter in terms of the effects and transitions you're supposed to do. In terms of the special effects and whatnot that you've seen me using throughout the visual novel, let me just quickly pull up. I actually used a lot of the screenshots and effects from the original Fate Stay Night visual novel. Like, it's an old game, but the visual effects, like this one right here, I use this in my video as well. Like, this stuff looks pretty amazing, and sure, the black background gets in the way a little bit, but it's possible to get around that using a bit of Photoshop. There's a lot of stuff that I had to do in Photoshop to make a lot of these special effects serviceable, and some special effects I did have to make on my own, like the Excalibur effect from the Surprise of Emiya-san. I had to make that myself. Not sure if this is the right file, but I'll see if I can quickly show you. When possible, I tried using other pre-existing artwork, because no, they're going to be far better than anything that I do, but in the absence of that, I did have to do some workarounds. And also, the scenes in Surprise of Emiya were drawn by my friend. He did a really good job of, yeah, so it was like this one, except I had it oscillating, so it looked really nice. Like these ones, they were drawn by my friend, Aether Animation, and honestly, this scene was really important to me in that particular episode, and I'll go over technical aspects regarding that later too. But that's more or less the way it worked. RenPy has a lot of flexibility, and as long as you know how to, like, I have movies, I have images, and all that stuff. As long as you know the coding and all that stuff, it is possible to make your own sort of sequence like this. And honestly, I'll be honest with you, I'm surprised that more people haven't tried doing something like this before with Fate Stay Night, not Fate Stay Night, Fate Grand Order, just considering that they basically use a visual novel format for most of the story cinematics and cutscenes. So that's basically it for the technical aspects, and now I guess onto the story writing aspects. So, what inspired me to use these particular characters and this particular story? And I'll be honest, I'm a little hesitant to talk about it, but like I'm pretty sure some of you might be disappointed to hear the origin of the story. So, but I do owe it to my audience to let them know, because I have received a lot of feedback. Like, why is this character here? Why does this character show up but like basically do nothing and stuff like that? And I do want to address some of those questions as well. So, let's start with the very first video, the Melancholy of Emiya-san. That video was made in April of 2019, and about 3 months before this video was published, I had just broken up with my ex-girlfriend. We were both big fans of Fate Grand. I wouldn't say big fans, but like I was really into it, but I don't know if she was. We both really liked Fate Grand Order. My favorite character is Emiya, because I've been exposed to the Fate franchise for a long time. Archer has always been my favorite character without a doubt. And my ex-girlfriend's favorite character was Mysterious Hero in X. You can already sort of see where this is going, right? A lot of people were just saying, well, Melancholy of Emiya-san's really nonsensical, I don't understand why it's there. And like, yeah, to be quite honest with you, it is really nonsensical. Like, the reason why that was the first idea I came up with was because I made that first video around my ex's birthday, and that's all I could really think about at the time. But it was also a demonstration of the technical capabilities of the program and how I could possibly proceed forward with further projects using that as a template. So it was still a really important first project, though admittedly not very strong in terms of actual story value. I think when that video first came out, let me just quickly pull up this data here. When this first came out, it was just sitting around like 400 views, like pretty steadily. Nothing happened to it, and the only reason why the views took off later on was because the disappearance of Emiya-san got a lot of notice on YouTube for some reason. I don't know exactly why, but YouTube algorithm magic, right? So, after I made this video, I had intentions of making a sequel. I just didn't know what exactly would be a good story to follow that up with. And then I finished my final exams in December, and I said, okay, well, maybe a Christmas special would be a good idea. So then I decided, okay, let's gather up some of the old characters, some of the new characters, and make a story where, because Emiya is always part of Chaldea's kitchen. He's pretty important there, but like, sometimes people seem to take that for granted. And let's just make him, disappear for a bit. And everyone gets worried and concerned, because he doesn't usually do that. And that's ultimately what I ended up going with. So, I mean, Nero's there just because Nero was there. Mash and Master, that's obvious. Hero and X is like, again, I had people tell me, why is Hero and X there? And that was something that I could not address until I got to the Surprise of Emiya-san for that very reason. Because, again, the whole inspiration for the creation of these videos was my breakup. And then I did have, there was another problem with Disappearance that a lot of people brought up, is that they did not know why Okita Soji was there. A lot of people were like, it makes no sense, why is she there? Some people were like, I like the fact that you put Okita there, it's a nice touch. But vast majority of the people were saying that I don't know why Okita's there. So it is also related to my breakup, and I'll explain that as concisely as I can. In my breakup, there was the proverbial, I'm sure you've all heard of it, the guy she tells you not to worry about, right? So, a lot of weird complications with my relationship near the end of it, but there was a guy who I thought he was my friend, and he was close with my ex. He also played Fate Grand Order, and we chatted about it fairly regularly. His favorite character was Okita Soji. It's like, now you see where all the dots starting to connect, right? So, in the scene in Disappearance where Emiya says to Okita, you remind me of someone I hate, on the story level, this actually works out amazingly because both Hiro and X and Okita are saber faces. I never intended for this to happen, but I'm really glad it did. So yeah, on the story level, they're both saber faces. So of course, saber faces remind Emiya of Hiro and X. But on the meta level, which, only people who knew my situation, like all of you now, would understand, is that there was a second meaning. Like, because Emiya is my favorite character, I'm sort of projecting myself into Emiya. So, it's also a statement about my feelings as well. And honestly, the more I worked on this video series, the more it became about how do I evoke the feelings that I have right now in the audience that's watching this video without making it really obvious that this is basically about a breakup, right? I mean, based on the feedback that I received about Disappearance, is that a lot of people enjoyed it for what it was, but it wasn't really like, how to describe it? It wasn't really capturing the whole, like, the sense of abandonment and being forgotten and being replaced kind of thing, right? It was just sort of there, like, you sort of felt for Emiya, but you didn't really you didn't have a good grasp on the way he really felt, and I think that was both an issue with my creative vision and also my ability to storytell. I did have the Surprise of Emiya-san planned out way afterwards, and the biggest problem with that was just realism. It's really hard to make like basically a fanfic that's also true to the lore of the characters. The biggest question I had was, would Mysterious Hero X really just replace Emiya and like not say a word, like basically like just be completely apathetic to his pain kind of thing? And it's like, well, you sort of see that in like the Saber Wars event. Like when you first meet Hero and X in Fate Grand Order, it's like X isn't above using Lily for her own purposes. And I guess that sentence is actually a bit awkward to say out loud because my ex-girlfriend's name is Lily. Anyways, so Hero X is not above using other people for her own purposes, and also we've seen from servants like Avacabron and Emiya that servants will betray other people for their own purposes, right? So I figured it was a bit of a stretch, but not too much of a stretch. I had the idea for the Surprise of Emiya already basically down pat, that they were going to fight. There was going to be an explanation of the backstory between these characters, because there's no relationship between X and Emiya in proper Fate Grand Order lore, so I had to basically make it up along the way. And the inspiration for that came with my own experience playing in Fate Grand Order. Emiya was not my first 4-star servant. He might be like my most jacked servant in my Spirit Origin list, but my first servant that I actually relied on a lot was probably Tamamo Cat. Like when I went through Orleans and Septim, like Tamamo Cat was what carried me through like all the tough fights. When I was farming materials for Emiya, it was Tamamo Cat that was helping me get embers and shit. So it's kind of like what I weaved into the story, because my experience is that you have a servant that you rely on a lot when you first start the game, because they're your most powerful servant. They're the only thing that's carrying you through all these story missions. But the moment you get someone stronger, you start investing in that stronger servant, and soon enough, you stop using that servant that you started using initially. Like, I haven't touched Tamamo Cat in forever. Yes, she's bond level 10 and all max level and all that stuff, but like, I don't use her at all, right? So I figured that might be other people's experience as well when it comes to their experience playing Fate Grand Order. And it seems, based on the comments I've gotten in the Surprise of Emiya, that has been the case. That it is like you have servants that you use and you eventually, excuse me, replace. So my big goal with Surprise of Emiya was to actually finally start doing that one-to-one analogous replacement of my breakup with a story that I thought could touch the audience, make them feel the same kind of emotions that I did. Because, like I said before, people have two really big fears in life: being abandoned and forgotten, and being replaced, right? And I wanted to use these servants as a way to illustrate that example. Because gameplay-wise, you will eventually find better servants, and even in real life, there's people that you'll meet that you'll become close to, but eventually you either drift apart or something else happens, and you just, you don't just walk along the same path in life anymore, right? It was tough to make that convincing, but I think based on the feedback I've gotten on the Surprise of Emiya, it went back decently well, despite the stretch with Hero X being, well, I guess for lack of a better words, an asshole. Another thing I did notice is that some people, at least when I read through the comment section of Surprise, was that they were on X's side. They thought that she didn't do anything wrong. And that was kind of like the thing I wanted to generate, because there was a lot of people who were going to be just like, oh, Emiya got replaced, or he was betrayed, and like that's your knee-jerk reaction when you see a situation like this. But then when you carefully look at the way things played out, it wasn't entirely X's fault, and in fact, it was hardly her fault to begin with. It was just sort of miscommunication between the two people that eventually developed into a grudge, which eventually boiled over and like exploded like a powder keg. That's kind of the way I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be more like a more realistic story, because Fate is not the kind of story where everyone gets to be happy and everyone gets to have their fairy tale ending. Like, a lot of it comes down to the suffering of individuals who are trying to fulfill their wish, right? And I think having Emiya and X fight, having them convey their feelings to each other, but not becoming friends again and all that stuff was really important. And I think that it was very well received by the audience as well. And here's where I got to talk about the problem with making a sequel. So a lot of people have been asking me if I'll make a sequel to the story, and it's like, yes, I really want to, because the feedback for this stuff has been really positive, and it's inspired me to try and make more. But then, on the other hand, it's like, it's a long time to come up with these scripts, and my knowledge of actual Fate characters is quite limited. Like, if you ask me to write a story involving, like, Shakespeare, or, like, Blackbeard, or oh fuck, like Christopher Columbus, I would be caught so dead because I don't know enough about these characters. Even writing a character like Mordred might be difficult for me, despite how well I'm acquainted I am with her story, kind of thing, right? So at the end of the day, I do like the idea I have for a new story. Like, I'll just tell you right now because I don't want to hold anything back. The story I'd have next is that instead of having interpersonal conflicts between Chaldea's servants, there was going to be like an external threat, kind of like what happens during like the random summer events where like someone invades Chaldea or someone causes problems. But I would want to write it more like what happens in Anastasia, like in Lost Bell. I'm not sure if you've all played through it, so I'm not going to talk about the story of Anastasia very much. But the idea is that conflict shouldn't be black and white. Like, you know, the one problem I've always had with figuring out a story is that you know you're doing the right thing. No matter how shitty things get, you know that you as master are always making the right decision, right? But I feel like that makes for like less interesting of a conflict. So what I would want to do is I would want to use Emiya, Huron X, maybe Mordred Frankenstein, X Alter. I'm definitely using X Alter if I'm making a new story, and I would want to make like this new conflict where, you know, there's a bit of like maybe not necessarily moral ambiguity, but like a more difficult fight where you have to really think about whether or not, like, do I fight this person or not? Do I take part in this battle or not? Do I take this side or not? Because that's really like that's the kind of thing that makes a story interesting. Being uncertain of your own decisions, questioning your own actions, second guessing yourself. That's what I want to do with this next story. And a lot of people are saying, well, like, are you going to have Artoria and Emiya hang out more? Are you going to eventually make Huron X and Emiya become friends together? And I'm unsure about all of this stuff right now. Like, I have ideas, but I'm not sure how to proceed. Like, the big driving factor for me making these first 3 episodes was just my breakup. Like, the emotions are definitely there. The artistic expression needs to be worked on, but it can be mastered over time. But once you have like real life experience to draw from, it's really easy, right? If I'm to make more videos right now, I would have to be drawing from my own imagination a lot more, and I don't know if I'll necessarily be able to make better content that way. So it's sort of up in the air right now, but I will be talking with my editors and my friends for some ideas, and hopefully I'll be able to create more content off of that. If not, I will just post another video detailing my future direction for the channel, because I honestly never expected these videos to get this much attention. Aside from that, I think that's basically all I wanted to touch on. So, like I said, once again, thank you guys all so much for your support, for watching my videos, for giving me so much encouragement. And if any of you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment in this video or any of the other videos, and I'll address all these questions when I get a chance to. So once again, this is Akira the White, signing off. Stay safe, Masters.